Hey, this is Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, 3rd edition out now, and you're listening to your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart, weekly music news for the new music business.
For music business worldwide, there are now over 200 million tracks on audio streaming services. Nearly 100 million of them aren't played more than 10 times each year.
And from Billboard, why physical album variants have exploded in the streaming era.
And another one from Billboard, music business trends, topics, and stories to watch in 2025. Well, I have my spectacles on, Jay. I am ready to start watching. So here we are. It is Your Morning Coffee podcast. We're glad you're here, and we're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, good to see you, Jay, in fact, I'm in Northern California. I am a long ways away from you here in beautiful Redding, California.
Yeah, I hope your trip goes well. We need to talk just briefly about this LA fire. All of these LA fires have been so apocalyptic and devastating. Thankfully, my area has been spared, at least for now. But there's a wonderful piece in Hypebot this week, and the headline was Los Angeles Fire Relief for musicians, music professionals, and they update that just about every day. They talk about the stories of loss and devastation in the Los Angeles area, including for tens of thousands working in the music business. They're really unimaginable, but there are also numerous examples of people and organizations working to help, which has been amazing. So check out Hypebot's continuously updated list of LA fire events, donations, resources for musicians and music professionals. And kudos to Bruce Houghton and the team over at Hypebot.
Yeah, for sure. And, having gone through it on my own family farm, it is, when you see those flames coming down the hill, it is a level of fright you have never experienced.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. So, And speaking of that, an interesting piece in Variety, Lady Gaga, Joni Mitchell, Stevie Nicks, and more announced for Fire Aid benefit concerts. Proceeds from the show will go towards a 501c3 nonprofit with the funds supporting rebuilding infrastructure, supporting displaced families, and advancing fire prevention technologies and strategies to ensure LA is better prepared for fire emergencies.
Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah. This Fire Aid concert, it's going to be held January 30th at the Intuit Dome and the Kia Forum in Inglewood. That's in the LA area. And it's going to be broadcast across multiple channels. Tickets go on sale starting January 22nd through Ticketmaster.
Yeah, boy, and what a lineup, including Billie Eilish and Phineas, Dave Matthews and John Mayer, Earth, Wind and Fire, Gracie Abrams, Green Day, Gwen Stefani, Jelly Roll, Joni Mitchell, Katy Perry. Wow.
Yeah, it's an all-star lineup. And if that wasn't enough, other artists that are going to perform: Lady Gaga, Lil Baby, Pink, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rod Stewart, Sting, Stephen Stills, Stevie Nicks, and Tate McRae.
anybody I've heard of, Jay.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be more too. It's fantastic. Yeah. I love seeing whenever there's any kind of tragedy like this, it's really heartwarming to see people step up and help other people. So kudos to them.
Certainly is. Well, the big news this week, Jay, Luminate releases the 2024 year-end music report. Of course, we had a special Your Morning Coffee podcast with a conversation with our good friend Jamie Markinet from Luminate. And here are some of the questions we posed to our good friend Jamie.
Yeah, this is super interesting. And please listen to this episode of the podcast. We always have an insightful conversation with Jamie when Luminate releases these reports. You know, the mid-year report. This one's a year-end report for 2024. Super interesting. And as you mentioned, here's some of the topics and talking points that we brought up. The first one was streaming growth. You know, we asked him, what factors do you believe contributed to the faster growth rate of ODA streaming in ex-US territories compared to the US?
Yeah, we also talked about genre trends. We asked him, can you elaborate on what specific dynamics led to pop overtaking Latin as the fastest growing genre in the U.S. in the second half of 2024, which, quite frankly, surprised the dickens out of me. We've talked about Latin so much, and then here we are. We've got pop this year being even stronger than Latin. Stunning.
Yeah, there were definitely some shifts, and one of the areas of the report we found super interesting was cultural impact. And we asked him, how do you see streaming platforms influencing the cultural impact of music from non-English speaking countries?
Yeah, and of course, you can't talk to Jamie and talk about these reports without talking about superfans and what characteristics define superfans and how do they differ from casual listeners in their engagement with music.
Right, and they have a whole section on live music. So we talked about live music attendance, and we asked him, why do you think Gen Z is spending more on live music events compared to other generations?
Well, and this time we also talked about something near and dear to both of our hearts and something we talk about all the time on this particular podcast, which is the impact of documentaries. And he talked about some examples of how music documentaries have influenced streaming consumption for the artists featured. Really great conversation about that.
Yep. And we covered genre performance, and we asked him about, insights that he could share about niche genres compared to mainstream genres, especially when it comes to streaming.
And in the world of physical sales, we talked about the resurgence of physical album sales and talking about how the trend will evolve in the coming years.
Yep, and a couple of others. We talked about brand partnerships and really how brands can leverage insights from this report and this what they call the Luminate Index to create these effective partnerships with artists.
Right. And they're continually kind of refining how they do all of these reports. And we talked about some of the new areas of metrics they plan to explore in the future and getting deeper insights into the music industry. And man, it was really a fascinating conversation. And of course, that is just not my world. And so I am so impressed and also just awed, quite frankly, on how they put together these things and how they pull from so many diverse sources to get and put together one of these reports. And it is super deep, and man, we are really appreciative of all the hard work they do at Luminate, because that is data crunching to the high power.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So in other news, I saw this headline in Hits, which I thought was really interesting because we've talked a little bit about record clubs, vinyl clubs, and this is a label club, which I thought it's interesting how they're putting it together, and I'm interested to see how it goes. The headline was Verve Record Club to launch in February. Verve is putting a modern spin on an old school concept with the Verve Record Club. It's a premium vinyl subscription service focused on iconic jazz recordings from the label group's catalog.
Right. The club will launch in February with a reissue of the 1962 classic John Coltrane Quartet, called Coltrane, basically. Like all of the club's offerings, the album will be crafted from analog sources, pressed on 180-gram vinyl and packaged in numbered tip-on jackets. All offerings will be pressed in limited editions of 2,500.
Yeah, John Pinder, who's a VP of Revenue and Consumer Acquisition for Verve Label Group, said, "This is more than a subscription service. It's an entryway into the heart of jazz history. With the Verve Record Club, we're inviting fans to rediscover these extraordinary recordings in a way that honors their artistry and legacy with the highest quality sound and presentation.
Right. So Ken Drucker, he's the senior vice president of jazz development at VLG, said jazz vinyl collecting has never been more vibrant. We're thrilled to bring these classics and some hidden gems back to life with an exhaustive attention to detail. It's an exciting time for jazz fans everywhere.
Yeah. So further monthly releases from the club will include titles from Nina Simone, Louis Armstrong, Bill Evans, Ella Fitzgerald, Stan Getz, and Billie Holiday. And here's how the pricing looks like it's going to go. It'll probably be like $47 a month. That's month to month. You can get a discount if you pay for multiple months, like it's $135 for 3 months, $258 for 6 months, and $492 for the annual subscription, which breaks down to about $41 a month versus the $47 a month if you do month to month. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Well, it's a clever idea, and like many people of our generation, I started my record collection by joining one of the record clubs at the time, Columbia Record Club, and I think RCA had one as well. And I can still tell you, and for those that weren't alive at that time, you basically paid like a penny or maybe it was $1, and you got like 12 albums. And now the artists were kind of getting hosed on that, but in the most contracts of the day, they were allowed. That was mentioned in the contract that they would have to, some of their titles would be used in record clubs, but it was a great way to basically start building your collection of vinyl quickly.
Right.
And
well, you would get those
awesome.
12 for a penny, but then you would agree to pay full list price on the albums that they sent you each month, and you could always send it back. But that was a great way back in the day to start your collection.
No, and the fact that it's jazz, because I was thinking about this when I read the article. People kind of forget how, in terms of the categories of jazz and classics, how the closure of Tower Records really impacted the overall sales of jazz and classics. And because that was such a go-to resource, and they had oftentimes special departments or special stores next door in terms of Tower Records. And when they went away, man, those categories really changed for the worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a really great spin on that. So kudos.
Yep.
By the way, an insightful post from our friend Bobby Osinski this week. This could be the algorithm that frees us from AI-generated music. He says, I don't think that musicians are inherently against AI-generated music when used as a tool, but they're certainly insulted and outraged when it's used instead of real human-generated music. This is especially egregious when a song generated by an algorithm is collecting Spotify or TikTok royalties while real artist tracks go unplayed. The real problem is that sometimes these AI-generated songs can sound so real that no one can tell the difference. But what if there was a foolproof way to spot a track generated by AI? YouTuber Benn Jordan thinks he's found it.
Yeah, I watch Ben Jordan's videos on YouTube all the time. They're really well done. Ben, he hosts this wonderful YouTube music and science channel. He claims that he's found a way to spot AI-generated music that so far has identified songs generated using the Suno platform, which many think is the best at creating human-like music. And he claims it's 100% of the time. Let's listen to Ben explain that.
Another pretty exciting thing in this video, I've sussed out a way to catch and identify musicians and artists who download music off of AI music generator sites, claim it as their own, and then put it on Spotify and other streaming services to siphon royalties away from, actual musicians writing their own music. Then I got a little bit obsessed and took it up a notch and trained an AI model that so far has been able to detect if a song has been generated by AI on Suno with 100% accuracy. So we're going to talk about that.
Wow, that is so interesting. Taking it one step further, Ben scraped 560 of Suno's top generated songs and then discovered that out of those 560, only 11 were not being monetized on a digital streaming platform. The problem here is that the other 549 songs were being posted by someone posing as a real artist, and in some cases, the songs received hundreds of thousands of plays.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. Check out Ben Johnson's YouTube channel. It's really insightful, and also check out Bobby Owsinski in his blog, two of our favorites. Something that dropped a little bit too late for the newsletter this week was this ultimate guide for a kick-ass year 2025, and that's from our friends over at Symphonic. We look forward to this every year, and we've partnered with Randall and his team to go through some of these from time to time. But this ultimate guide for a kick-ass year will sort of teach you everything you need to know about release strategy, physical distribution, how to get your music on TikTok, if that's still around, lyric distribution, voice strategy, sync licensing, publishing, branding, advertising, and so much more. So this will be in the newsletter that's coming this week. But check that out. It's really great.
Right. Well, and the best part is that Symphonic's ultimate guide for a kick-ass year is free. Curated by industry professionals with years of experience, this guide offers everything you need to know to make sure your music reaches its highest potential this coming year. You don't want to miss out on these valuable resources. It was posted on Hypebot and Symphonic's blog. Very cool.
Yeah, and before we jump into the stories, just a quick little plug, Mike and I work with a lot of talented music marketers, content creators, even graphic designers, video editors for short-form video, advertising specialists, booking agents, etc. If you need a little bit of help, you need an extra set of hands for your label, your management company, your distributor, give us a call.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a thick Rolodex, if it's even a Rolodex. Those went away with record clubs, apparently. Jay, before we get rolling, what do you say we thank our sponsors?
Yeah, let's do it. We're so fortunate that we have such great sponsors. And the first one is the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective. The MLC is a nonprofit organization, and they're making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and other rights holders by transforming how they receive mechanical streaming royalties from services like Spotify and Apple Music in the US. Every month, the MLC collects the streaming data and the royalties from those platforms. It matches the money to the creator who's earned it and then pays them or their publishers and admin partners the royalties that they're due. To date, the MLC has already distributed over $2.5 billion in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. If you're a songwriter, composer, lyricist with music streaming or a publisher or admin, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure that you're not leaving any money on the table. Best of all, membership is completely free, and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties that it receives. Visit themlc.com to learn more.
Yeah, that is the very definition of a no-brainer for sure. Hey, and a big special thanks to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. Want to change the tempo or pitch of a song? Adjust instruments or vocals? Mute background noise in a movie? Music.ai makes it easy. Embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio daily. They can process yours today. Jump over to Music.ai to get started. And let me tell you, those tools are unbelievably cool.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, man.
You got to give it a try.
You got to give it a try. And by the way, every week, I get to hang out with the handsome, the talented Mr. Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the most groovy weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
Thank you very much. Checks in the mail. I get to do this podcast every week. It's a highlight of my week. I really look forward to sitting down with Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group, and my go-to guy when I want to see a new music documentary.
And man, I am so behind on my music documentaries, I gotta say.
There's a lot of good stuff out. We've been talking about it on the show.
Stuff. Yeah. And in the Luminate report, he highlighted a number of them that I'm embarrassed to say I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
And so time to set aside some time for that.
Yeah.
We'll catch up. All right. Well, let's jump into the stories, Jay. Our first one is from our very good friend Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide with the horrifying title of There Are Now over 200 million tracks on audio streaming services. Nearly 100 million of them aren't played more than 10 times each year. What is the music industry going to do about unpopular music? Well, it's a debate that's poised to rage harder than ever in 2025, thanks to new statistics revealed by music monitor and analysis platform Luminate today. That was January 15th.
Yeah, and again, we broke all of this down with Jamie Markinet from Luminate, so don't miss that episode of the Your Morning Coffee podcast. So according to Luminate's 2024 year-end music report, 202 million separate tracks were available on audio streaming services at the end of the year. And that's tracks, as in files with their own distinct ISRC code. That's the International Standard Recording Code. But what you need to know is that's basically a unique identifier on the master side. So yes, there could be a song that's released that has multiple versions. So those are multiple ISRCs. But for the sake of this discussion, we're going to, make ISRCs. Those are tracks.
Right. Well, that 202 million figure was up by approximately 18 million, or almost 10% year over year, when compared to the equivalent figure from Luminate's prior year report. That was at 184 million. In simpler terms, on average, comfortably more than 1 million new tracks were uploaded to music streaming services per month in 2024.
Oh my God. Indeed, Luminate calculates that there was, on average, about 99,000 new ISRCs delivered to DSPs like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, etc., each day on average in 2024. And that's down slightly from 2023, when over 103,000 were uploaded daily. Now, and these are important numbers, but there's an even hotter talking point sticking out from Luminate's new report, and it's this. Nearly half of these 202 million, that's around 93 million, nearly half of these tracks that are available on streaming services in 2024 were played no more than 10 times last year.
Right. So many of you out there who may be, let's say, more artist-centric minded would argue that these 93 million tracks should be excluded from the royalty pool on streaming services. Now, of course, when it comes to services like Spotify, they already are shut out.
That's right. Last year, Spotify began omitting any tracks that hadn't, reached at least 1,000 plays in a 12-month period from its royalty pool. Luminate's new numbers show that last year, some 175.5 million tracks were played 1,000 times or less across these audio streaming services, including Spotify.
Yikes. Well, that's approximately 87% of the 202 million tracks monitored by Luminate. To flip that around for a second, around 9 in every 10 tracks on streaming services today fails to attract more than 1,000 plays per year across all audio platforms. Now, Luminate didn't reveal the number of tracks with 0 plays in 2024, but it's believed to be around a quarter of all available tracks, kind of in the region of about 50 million.
Wow. Not even played once. There is, of course, a counter argument to the quote-unquote artist-centric way of thinking. Some in the music business are not fans of Spotify and other services blocking tracks that fail to hit popularity thresholds, for example, that 1,000 streams per year, from their royalty payouts. These folks often argue that when looked at it as a whole, those 175.5 million tracks, the ones played 1,000 times or less last year, they claim a material market share of streaming's total listens.
Right. So on the other hand, Luminate's new stats highlight a problematic issue for much of the music industry, which is the oversaturation of streaming platforms. The rise of cheap, free, and AI-powered production tools has resulted in an explosion of new user-uploaded releases, leading to an increasingly long tail of tracks on Spotify and the others that are barely being noticed at all by listeners.
Yeah, the same industry supply and demand problem was further highlighted with Chartmetric's Year in Music report that was issued this week. Of the 11 million Spotify artists tracked on Chartmetric in 2024, just a little over 5% of them, so about 585,000, had more than 1,000 monthly listeners.
You read that correctly, by the way, or you heard that correctly. Around 95% of artists on Spotify have fewer than 1,000 monthly listeners. And some 86% of artists on the platform, according to Chartmetrics stats, have fewer than 10 monthly listeners.
Oh, my goodness.
The numbers don't get any less staggering each year, do they, Jay?
No, they really don't. And you really need to break down... not break down. You need to download this report. It's absolutely beautiful. And again, we talk about it with Jamie Markinette on that special episode. But they did such a great job of animating these charts and graphs, and you can sort of tell at a glance what's going on. And they have all sorts of new metrics this year that they didn't have last year, and Jamie breaks those down. I highly recommend taking a look at this report. But you're absolutely right. It really shines a light on the fact that there is this fire hose of music that's being released, and much of it is not streamed much at all.
If at all. All right, Jay, our next story, it is from Billboard, I should say. Music business trends, topics, and stories to watch in 2025. This is by our friend Dan Rice over at Billboard. From a potential TikTok ban to the upcoming Diddy trial to changes coming in streaming, AI distribution, and concert ticketing, there is plenty to watch in 2025. That is an understatement.
There sure is. And to put it mildly, 2025 has not gotten off to a great start, given the awful wildfires, that have devastated my homeland here, the LA area, leaving at least, 24 dead and thousands more misplaced and without homes. For those affected, the repercussions are likely to last for months, probably years to come.
No, for sure. So though none of the issues facing the music business comes close to that level of seriousness, there are nonetheless much uncertainty to come in the next 12 months. In the coming days, the Supreme Court is set to weigh in on a law that could see TikTok banned from the United States or sold, a situation with the potential to cause a big uproar in the way music is marketed and promoted.
Right. And if you've been keeping up on this whole Sean Diddy Combs thing, in that legal realm, that there's a criminal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, and it could put the entertainment mogul behind bars for the rest of his life. I mean, this is serious, with multiple lawsuits and federal legislation seeking to regulate the use of AI in music, could have legal and copyright repercussions for years. Concert ticket prices are continuing to rise. Record labels and streaming companies are increasing crackdowns on fraud, and the streaming ecosystem, the distribution marketplace, has been a frenzy of activity in a way that is unlikely to slow down. And, the new Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown, has kept the focus on music-led films in a way that seems to grow every year, thankfully.
Yeah, well, as the year gets underway, Billboard has pulled together 11 music business trends, topics, and stories to keep an eye on in 2025 from across the various sectors of the industry, from genre growth in country music to the future of radio to the much vaunted streaming 2.0 paradigm. Here's a few highlights, by the way. So first, concert ticket pricing continues to evolve. Concert ticket pricing used to be as simple as setting two price points for the show, one for the front and one for the back. Well, today, determining how much a fan pays to get into a show is a complex mix of algorithmic pricing, data analysis, economic modeling, and artificial intelligence, believe it or not.
So Kirk Summer, who's a senior partner and global co-head of music at WME, said effective pricing means creating enough entry points so that fans at every socioeconomic level can find a way to participate. Yes, there is a premium, but it's accessible to everyone that values that premium.
So included in these topics to talk about, will TikTok be banned? Well, Jay and I are sitting here on a Saturday recording this, the day before the deadline. Of course, we'll break it down for you all this week in the newsletter. And of course, what about Diddy's downfall? This is from Bill Donahue. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs, one of the industry's most powerful men, was not just a chart-topping hip-hop artist and producer, but also a media mogul with his own record label and consumer brands.
That's right. But starting in late 2023, he was hit with a flood of sexual abuse allegations, first in the form of civil lawsuits, then in a stunning September criminal indictment on sex trafficking and racketeering charges. All eyes will be on a Manhattan federal court in May when Diddy heads to trial for a showdown with federal prosecutors, a battle that could end with a life in prison sentence.
Continuing talking about ticket pricing, this push toward pricing efficiency has pushed ticket prices up. According to Billboard Box Score, the average ticket price to one of the top 100 tours of 2024 has increased more than 20% compared to 2022. But concert industry insiders hope that new rules outlawing drip pricing, where fans aren't shown the actual price of a ticket inclusive of fees until checkout, will make it easier for fans to comparison shop.
Yeah, but Nathaniel Morrow, with the National Independent Talent Organization, NITO, worries that all-in pricing could lead to an increase in the junk fees regulators are seeking to combat. He said that transparency is how new fees are calculated and collected is critical to any effort to keep ticket prices affordable.
Yeah. Well, Kristen Robinson talked about streaming fraud crackdown. Streaming fraud, artificially boosting the stream count of a particular song, has been a contentious issue in the music business for years. But efforts to curb the problem intensified in 2024 and will no doubt continue well into 2025.
Right. Kristen goes on to say that the industry's fight against streaming fraud has hit a fever pitch in September when a man in North Carolina was indicted by federal prosecutors over allegations that he used AI to help create hundreds of thousands of songs and then use bots to stream the AI tracks and earn more than $10 million in fraudulent streaming royalty payments since 2017, marking the first ever streaming fraud case in the U.S. Then, in December, Amazon Music became the latest streaming service to test out UMG's new Streaming 2.0 plan, which is designed in part to help prevent artificial streams.
Right. As AI streaming fraud lawsuits continue and the streamers, continue to consider new rules to curb artificial consumption, 2025 is expected to add at least some new guardrails around streaming fraud. The only problem is that the fraudsters, they certainly keep evolving.
Right. And then the next section was on AI regulation by Kristen Robinson, who has Machine Learning, which is this great newsletter that you can subscribe to for free from Billboard. She's also joining us at the end of the month on our AI Roundtable special episode. Anyway, Kristen talks about AI regulation here, and she says that the honeymoon phase of AI is over in the music business. After capturing the industry's fascination and fear, starting with the fake Drake song and Heart on My Sleeve in May 2023, attempts to regulate the new technology are well underway. Whether it's UMG's ongoing case against Anthropic, the crusade to create federal protection for publicity rights, or the three major labels' lawsuits against Suno and Udio, the music industry can expect at least some resolution to these efforts in 2025.
Right. So Elias Late comes in on distribution concentration. He says in 2024, at least half a dozen independent music distributors started fundraising or explored selling their businesses. And the year ended with Universal's Virgin Music Group buying Downtown Music Holdings, which includes the DIY artist distributor CD Baby, as well as the B2B tech and distribution platform Fuga, or FUGA, for $775 million. Consolidation in this space is likely to continue as the major labels look to prevent erosion of market share and adapt to a world where more and more artists desire distribution deals.
Right, and Elias goes on to cover streaming services differentiate. He says that Music Streaming 1.0 was all about offering giant catalog of music and helping customers find what they should play next. And that's according to Steve Boom from Amazon. He told that to Billboard. He serves as VP of Audio, Twitch, and Games at Amazon. He believes the music industry is entering a new phase. Now you're going to see increased divergence of the value proposition from different streamers, he said. And the services are there not just to play music, but to help deepen fan culture, connect you to other listeners, connect you to the artist, and develop listeners into fans.
Right. So Steve Knopper weighed in on the future of radio. He said, iHeartMedia remains radio's bellwether. The 860-station, 10,000-employee company has more broadcast listeners today than it did a decade ago, and it's the #1 podcast publisher, according to Chairman and CEO Bob Pittman. And Illuminate study in December reports 54% of millennials and 38% of Gen Z listeners discover new music via old-fashioned AM and FM radio. John Janik, who's the chairman and CEO of Interscope Capital, said radio is important to this company.
Yeah. I didn't realize that it was that influential still.
I know, it's amazing.
But Spotify-style streaming's growth hasn't been great for terrestrial radio, beginning with iHeart over the past few years. Other studies have suggested radio is declining. Broadcast radio's advertising share is declining and expected to keep doing so. iHeart and the number 2 broadcaster, Odyssey, must contend with billions in debt, and both companies laid off dozens of employees in 2024.
Right. So how will the ongoing debt affect those companies' operations? Are more layoffs forthcoming? Will labels slash their radio promos resources accordingly as they did in early 2024? After losing his job in November as an 11-year co-host of a drive time show on iHeart-owned Cleveland rock station WMMS, Bill Squire answered succinctly. He said they're cutting costs wherever they can.
Yes, and the next topic is one near and dear to our hearts, and this was from Gail Mitchell. Music biopics continue to proliferate. She said that, it rained biopics in 2024, and with theatrical films chronicling, the hard-won success stories of legendary music artists like Bob Marley, Amy Winehouse, Pharrell, Robbie Williams. With the latest, of course, that Bob Dylan focused, A Complete Unknown. Can't wait to see that. Gaining considerable Oscar buzz. Another downpour is forecast in this coming year and beyond, with previously announced high-profile biopics portraying lives of the Beatles, Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Linda Ronstadt, and Janis Joplin.
Right. So our good friend Glenn Peoples weighed in on this topic. Investors love music companies. Expect the trends of the 20s to continue into 2025, which is investment and consolidation in artist and label services businesses, distribution platforms, and tech platforms that help music companies monetize hardcore fans. At the same time, music companies will gain greater focus by shedding non-core assets, just as Warner Music Group sold its media assets, Uproxx, Hip Hop DX, and others in 2024. SM Entertainment is currently preparing to unload unspecified businesses.
Yeah, more broadly, there's a belief across financial world that conditions will lead to a strong year for mergers and acquisitions. Interest rates are steady, inflation is declining, and recent elections have removed some of the political guesswork. Consulting firm KPMG, for example, expects, quote, strong growth in deal making, end quote, in tech and media driven by continued AI fever.
Right. So while Melinda Newman comes around with country music will continue to grow, country music's growth spurt is likely to continue in 2025 as coastal labels continue to sign artists who had previously fallen under Nashville's purview, given the tremendous success of crossover acts like Post Malone's F1 Trillion and Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, and country heavy hitters like Zach Bryan. Additionally, Morgan Wallen, whose 2021 Dangerous, the double album, ranked number 1 on Billboard's top Billboard 200 albums of the first 25 years of the 21st century, how's that for a mouthful, is working on new music, as are several other country superstars.
Great piece. Really great.
Hey, Jay, before we get going on this next story, what do you say we thank our sponsors? We've got so many right now, and we're so blessed to have them, including our good friends over at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a stunning website and online store for your music in minutes. All the features you need are already built in, including dozens of fully customizable templates, tools to sell your music and merch, commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list, integrations with Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Bands in Town, and more, so you can easily add content from your other online profiles, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Website plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting your own free custom domain name. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go over to bandzoogle.com and try it for free for 30 days and use the promo code MORNINGCOFFEE. That's all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code MORNINGCOFFEE.
Yeah, and we're also sponsored by our friends over at Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and trends and technologies that are really changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
And boy, do we love Bands in Town.
Yes,
Over
sir.
90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform, connecting over 650,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists, access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. Indeed. Big thanks to them. And our last story, Jay, why physical album variants have exploded in the streaming era. This is Steve Knopper over at Billboard with this story. With an average of 7 versions per top 10 album in mid-2024, labels and artists have upped their variant game in recent years, but some consumers are starting to push back.
An average of 7 versions per
Exactly.
top 10 album. And some have much, much more, which we'll get into in a second. So after helping to create the watery pink and gray cover for Linkin Park's 2024 album, From Zero, Frank Maddox, the band's art director, he chopped the visual into 5 pieces and adapted them into collages for 4 alternate vinyl releases. He said, I wanted to develop these unique textures I could use for whatever kind of piece they could schedule, whether it was a different vinyl or CD configuration. By the way, he's Warner Music's VP of Creative, and he's been working with the band on album artwork for 24 years. He said, it's smart to think of what would be the next tier of this artwork, or how can it adapt and change?
So From Zero came out with 17 alternate physical versions known as variants, including 11 vinyl LPs, 3 CDs, a CD box set, and 2 cassettes. And the combined sales of those variants contributed to Linkin Park's debut at #1 on 4 rock album charts in late November, including top rock albums and top hard rock albums. That may sound like a lot, but it's now standard in today's music industry, in which almost every hit artist, from Taylor Swift to Sabrina Carpenter to K-pop stars such as Twice, Atiz, and Stray Kids, markets highly priced variants to collectors and superfans.
Right. Today's variant explosion is really rooted in the early 2000s when the Eagles' 2007 album Long Road Out of Eden and AC/DC's 2008 album Black Ice boosted their CD sales with heavily hyped Walmart exclusives, and both landed #1 albums at a time when iTunes-style digital downloads dominated the business. In a way, these exclusives were the opposite of today's variant explosion. Each was available for sale at just one retailer, but they broke the dam. Up to that point, labels resisted deals involving exclusive albums for Walmart, Best Buy, and Target, fearing spurned old-school record stores might take out their frustrations by shortchanging other releases.
Right, so after the Eagles and AC/DC's successes, artists and labels realized they could provide exclusives and release multiple separate versions for sale directly to consumers through their own web stores or to multiple retailers. K-pop stars became masters of this practice, encouraging superfans to buy every single variant.
Wow. My friend Adam Abramson, formerly of Elektra Records, he was head of sales and streaming. He said that the idea of having consumers run around and collect them all and pick up the best version of the album isn't really new. In the mid-2000s, we could have had 4 or 5 exclusives. There might have been a Best Buy CD with 2 bonus tracks, a Target CD-DVD combo. Transworld might have a poster. Circuit City might have a T-shirt. Hot Topic would have some kind of merch item, and the indies would have a promo item.
I remember that. Well, it says, once streaming kicked in, though, artists and labels quickly realized CD sales had a disproportionate influence on the Billboard 200, so they could boost chart performance by offering fans extra material like concert tickets or merch. For a while, the Billboard charts allowed artists to bundle physical albums with concert tickets, but that all changed when Billboard banned the practice back in 2020. Mike Sherwood, who's the former executive VP of Global Commercial Marketing and Strategy at Capitol Records, said the ticket bundles going away was almost a tipping point that opened the floodgates. He said they had to be replaced by something, and that something became, well, this vinyl thing is happening over here, and you can make different colors and weights and packages.
I used to work with Mike Sherman. Dig that guy. Good to see his name in here. As a result, many of today's biggest artists have gone to extremes in putting out multiple variants. Taylor Swift is a master of this approach, scoring a #1 album earlier this year with the help of 859,000 first week sales, including 6 vinyl versions of Tortured Poets Department. And every time she sought a chart boost, she rolled out more versions, including not just physical LPs and CDs, but digital downloads, allowing the album to remain atop the Billboard 200 for 17 total weeks. At one point in May, Tortured Poets managed to stay ahead of Dua Lipa's #2, Radical Optimism, which arrived with 20 physical versions.
Oh my God. According to Luminate, in early 2019, the top 10 albums on Billboard 200 arrived with an average of 3.3 different versions of physical albums per week. By the end of 2023, that number had jumped to an average of 8.9 versions. During this time, which included the pandemic, the greatest gift to the vinyl business since Michael Jackson's Thriller, annual LP sales jumped from 18.8 million to almost 50 million.
Wow.
Tom Corson, co-chairman and CEO at Warner Records, Linkin Park's longtime label, said it's a great revenue play and the margins are solid. And for many years, it's been a growing business. K-pop, to some degree, helped unlock this market. And we learned from their ability to service the fan. If that manifests itself in a greater chart result, great.
The multiple versions trend has really gone over the top in recent years. Travis Scott's 2023 album Utopia arrived, ready for this, with 31 different variants.
Whoa.
And that hit #1, of course. Last year, the Rolling Stones put out a limited $38 vinyl editions of Hackney Diamonds with artwork representing each of the 30 Major League Baseball teams, while a Saltburn soundtrack variant contained bathwater-filled vinyl. By the way, I saw this Bon Jovi vinyl recently, Slippery When Wet, and it's got water inside the vinyl. It's really cool. And, you know, this Saltburn soundtrack variant sold out at prices ranging from $60 to $175. K-pop acts helped to pioneer, you know, this device and show no signs of stopping. In 2024, Twice's With Youth came out with 14 CD and 3 vinyl variants. Atiza's Golden Hour Part 2 had 23 CDs, 6 LPs, and 3 different digital downloads, both hit #1 on the Billboard 200 in their debut weeks. Wow.
Well, one artist who pushed back gently, mind you, on the practice was Billie Eilish, who said she would limit her variants on 2024's Hit Me Hard and Soft to a conservative 8, all packaged with recycled materials, but wound up releasing 14. Apparently changed her mind. She said at the time, "We are doing everything we can do to minimize waste in every aspect of my music."
Thank you, Billy. But there are business downsides to the multiple variant approach. You know, Adam Abramson again said, fans are talking it up and figuring out what color or version they want. And there's a fun element to that, but you're making people choose, oftentimes with limited resources financially, which vinyl variant they want, knowing they can't get them all. It's a little unfair to get them to spend maybe $40 extra to get one extra song.
Well, the market for endless physical variants may show signs of oversaturation. Fall Out Boy's 2023 album So Much for Stardust dropped with 31 physical versions in the first week, but LP copies were marked down by 30% during a recent holiday sale from retailer The Sound of Vinyl, suggesting low demand. Carl Mello, who's the director of brand engagement for New England music chain Newbury Comics, which benefits from variants when labels release exclusive LPs and CDs for release day events and record store day, says it's a point of differentiation if you have something other people don't have. That's a lovely thing and you can market around it. But, he says, the vinyl colors have been so omnipresent, but by the time the 12th color rolls out, the average consumer will be like, so what?
Right. And you just mentioned, you know, this Sound of Vinyl, that they had this 30% sale in this title. I recently bought some vinyl from Sound of Vinyl that was on sale for 50% off. And Merch Bar had a 50% off sale. And I talked to a friend of mine who runs a pressing plant, and he believes that they over-manufactured some of these hit titles because you're not seeing stock on some of these lesser-known titles. Anyway, labels nonetheless remain committed to their multiple variant strategy. You know, although, according to Peter Standish, Warner Records Senior VP of Marketing, they should study which artists fans crave collector's items and which ones don't. Warner's analytics department attempts to predict how many copies of a given album might sell so it doesn't lose too much money, given the expense and long lead times for LPs. And I would argue that those lead times are a lot less than they were. He said that we are trying to offer at least one configuration that's competitively financially, then maybe more elaborate ones, you know, with more packaging for the harder core fans, he says. But you also want to balance that with not overwhelming them with choice. I was really shocked, pardon my ignorance here, but 31 different variants, 20 different variants on one. Like, real. And I imagine there are some of those hardcore fans that want to collect all of them. Yes. That's a lot of cash.
It's a lot of cash, but this is the record business, Jay, and what's worth doing is worth overdoing, right? Always.
That's right. That's right. Crazy.
Well, anyway, listen, it is time to wrap up the show. Boy, Jay and I certainly appreciate everyone listening. And if you enjoy the show, please tell just one friend. We would really appreciate that, by the way. So big thanks to our good friends over at the MLC, Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town for their constant support. We really, really, really appreciate it. And of course, thanks to you all for listening. So on behalf of Jay Gilbert, my good friend, I'm Mike Etchart. We will see you next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.